Lakers. This team's been a total circus from the jump, and somehow they're still charging toward the playoffs like nothing happened. They started off with J.J. Redick, who never coached a day in his life, and threw him straight into the fire. Then, like they weren't chaotic enough, they shipped off Anthony Davis in that wild trade for Luka, completely flipping the roster. Luka has basically taken over everything, running the offense, while LeBron keeps putting up around 24 points a night like he refuses to slow down. Their defense actually tightened up after the new year, creeping into the top 8, and their offense cracked the top 10. So at least they've got some balance. Austin Reeves has took the next step, and Bronny James barely plays, but it's still wild seeing him on the floor next to his dad. Through wildfire postponements, injuries, and a coaching staff figuring it out on the fly, this team somehow stayed alive, still chasing a playoff run like nothing's gone sideways. Thunder. This team's been steamrolling through the season like they've got something to prove every single night. They kicked things off by flipping Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, instantly cranking up their defense with Caruso's chaos on the perimeter. Then Chet Holmgren came back from injury like he never left, leading the league in blocks and shutting down everything at the rim. Shea is playing like he's allergic to missing shots, torching teams while running the whole show. He'll probably win MVP. Jalen Williams made the All-Star team, giving them another two-way monster. Their three-point shooting has been ridiculous, sitting near 40% as a team, and they barely turn the ball over, making everything look way too easy. They even smashed their franchise win record without blinking, locking up the top spot in the West weeks before anyone else could catch up. Through tough back-to-backs and stretches without Chet, they just kept winning. Now they're rolling into the playoffs on a heater, looking like the team nobody wants to deal with when things really get serious. Warriors. This team's been running full speed into chaos all year, and somehow they're still right in the thick of the playoff hunt. They kicked it off by watching Klay Thompson walk to Dallas, basically ending an era, then patched the hole with Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson, like that would fix everything. Things got wild in February when they pulled off that massive trade, grabbing Jimmy Butler and throwing their whole season into fast forward. Butler's been a two-way wrecking ball, giving them defense and playmaking next to Curry, who's still out here defying time, like 36 is just a number. Draymond Green's doing what he always does, locking everything down on defense and stirring the pot. Moses Moody stepped up big, giving them some real scoring punch, while Brandon Podds came out of nowhere to be a legit threat. They've had their ugly stretches, especially in December, but since the trade, they flipped a switch, climbing back into the mix. Now, they're hoping their late surge and all this chaos somehow turn into something real. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to start posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Celtics. This team's been quietly stacking wins all season without making much noise, just methodically handling business like they've done it 100 times before. They kept their championship core fully intact, letting Tatum, Brown, Holiday, and Porzingis run it back while everyone else chased trades. Even with Porzingis missing time, early recovering from ankle surgery, they barely flinched, letting Horford hold things down in the middle. Tatum's been an MVP-level force, torching defenses and dragging them through tight games while Brown's kept pace. Even with some late-season knee issues, their defense has been ridiculous, with Holiday and White turning every possession into a nightmare for opponents. Offensively, they're firing from deep like it's their job, because it is, I guess, leading the league in three-point bombs and punishing anyone who gives them space. After the break, they've caught fire, looking like the team nobody wants to see in the playoffs. Even with a brutal January road stretch and injuries testing their depth, they've stayed locked in. They're dialed in, fully loaded, and ready to chase another banner like they never left the top. Cavaliers. This team's been acting like they've got the whole league figured out from day one, and honestly, they might not be wrong. They opened the season by tearing through everybody, starting 15-0 like they were on autopilot. Firing Bickerstaff and handing the job to Kenny Atkinson turned out to be a game changer, because now they're running an offense that feels completely unstoppable. Donovan Mitchell's been in full takeover mode, putting up around 26 a night and dragging defenders wherever he wants. Evan Mobley's turned himself into a real problem too, swatting shots and stretching the floor like he's been doing it for years. They even pulled off that sneaky trade for DeAndre Hunter, which only made their defense scarier. Darius Garland's been steady, running the show without forcing anything, and Ty Jerome's randomly turned into a serious spark off the bench. No matter who's in or out of the lineup, they just keep winning. Now with the top seed already locked up, they're coasting into the playoffs, looking like they've got one thing on their mind, dragging this season all the way to the final. Nuggets. This team's been stumbling through the season like they're lost without a map, and now they've gone full panic mode by firing Mike Malone right before the playoffs. After years, they blew it up at the most confusing possible time, hoping it'll spark something out of this mess. Losing KCP in the offseason wrecked their defense, and they never really fixed it. Russell Westbrook's brought some life off the bench, but his shooting's been a total disaster. Nikola Jokic is basically carrying this team on his back, dropping around 29 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists every night, while everyone else looks like they're waiting for him to bail them out. Jamal Murray's been battling injuries and can't seem to find a rhythm, which has dragged the offense down way more than they'd like to admit. Michael Porter keeps teasing breakout games, but most nights, he disappears. Christian Brown's done well stepping in, but this team's depth looks paper thin. They look shaky. They're desperate for a miracle turnaround before the playoffs hit. Knicks. This team's been treating the whole season like it's one long proving ground, sometimes looking great and other times rough. They went all in by grabbing Mikal Bridges and then doubled down trading for Karl Anthony Towns, completely flipping their front court. Bridges has been a hit-or-miss fit, giving them scoring pop, while Towns slid right into the offense like he's been there for years. Jalen Brunson's been the engine, slicing up defenses and dropping around 26 points a night, even after missing time with a hamstring strain. Mitchell Robinson's return put their defense back in order, clogging up the paint and cleaning the glass. Josh Hart's been everywhere, crashing boards, pushing the pace, and even sneaking in triple-doubles alongside Towns. They patched the bench with Landry Shamet, and Tyler Kolek's given them some sneaky good minutes too when he gets the chance. Even when injuries tested their depth, they kept finding ways to win. Now, with the season winding down, they're right in the mix, loaded with confidence, and aiming to turn this chaotic season into something serious. Although they may struggle against Boston, because they can't seem to ever beat them. Mavericks. This team's been swinging between chaos and desperation all season, like they just cannot figure out what they want to be. They went big early by grabbing Klay Thompson, hoping he'd stretch the floor, but his impact has been all over the place. Then came the nuclear move, shipping out Luka for Anthony Davis. This made every Mav fan wish they grew up anywhere but Dallas. Losing Luka gutted their offense. And even though Davis has been a monster defensively, the whole thing still feels clunky. And plus, Davis got hurt in his first game there. Kyrie has been doing his part when he's healthy, but he tore his ACL. Derek Lively's growth got smacked by an ankle injury, leaving Daniel Gafford scrambling to hold the front court together. Depth basically hanging on by a thread, with Spencer Dinwiddie somehow running the show like it's the plan. Jason Kidd's been mixing lineups non-stop, trying to squeeze something useful out of the mess. Suns. This team's season started like they were on top of the world and then crashed harder than anyone could have expected. They came out flying under Coach Bud, looking sharp with that fast pace and heavy three-point focus. But it all unraveled way too fast. Kevin Durant going down with that ankle sprain just piled onto the disaster, and without him or Devin Booker, they've been flat out hopeless. Bradley Beal's been banged up too, stuck dealing with a nagging hamstring that slowed him down all year. Even when Booker's been torching defenses, it's not enough to cover up the holes everywhere else. Their rebounding has been a disaster, sitting near the bottom of the league no matter what they try. They added Nick Richards mid-season to fix it, and while he's been solid, it barely moved the needle. Tyus Jones has kept the offense organized at times, but their defense keeps leaking points like a sinking ship. Now they're just limping to the finish line, knowing their season's cooked and bracing for a brutal summer full of hard decisions and possible big changes. Pistons. This team's pulled off one of the wildest turnarounds you'll see, going from total disaster to a squad that's actually dangerous. Basically, the anti-Suns. They overhauled everything, dumped Monty Williams, and brought in Bickerstaff, who somehow got this group to play like they care about winning. Cade Cunningham's been the heartbeat, stuffing the stat sheet every night like it's personal, while Jalen Duren's been a total monster in the paint, cleaning the glass and blocking shots like he's got something to prove. They added veterans like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr., and those guys have actually done their jobs, spacing the floor and hitting shots when it counts. Dennis Schroeder came in mid-season and has kept the offense steady, especially when Cunningham's been banged up. Even the young guys like Thompson have found ways to impact games without doing too much. The defense has finally stopped bleeding points, and the offense feels way more organized. Shout out to the Pistons, man. Bulls. This team's been bouncing around like they've got no idea what direction they're supposed to go, but somehow they've clawed their way into the play-in picture. They tore the whole thing down, moving on from DeRozan and Levine and threw the spotlight on the young guys to figure it out on the fly. Kobe White's been firing away, playing like he's got something to prove every single night. And Josh Giddey's been the unpredictable spark, racking up near triple doubles and even hitting that wild game winner against the Lakers that kept their hopes alive. Lonzo Ball finally came back after basically living in the rehab room, but his minutes have been spotty at best. They run at one of the fastest paces in the league, but it feels like they're sprinting in circles half the time. Still, with this final stretch of games, they've managed to stay afloat, thanks to Josh Giddey being the second coming of Magic Johnson. Timberwolves, this team cannot decide if they're rising contenders or just permanently stuck in basketball purgatory. They pulled the trigger on that Towns trade, bringing in Julius Randle, and honestly, it's been as chaotic as you'd expect. Randle's out here throwing his weight around, banging in the post, and hitting clutch shots, but then other nights he looks like Carlton Banks playing basketball. Anthony Edwards has been the only reason they've stayed alive, torching defenses and dropping monster games like it's nothing. He's been dragging this team like it's his personal mission, but the defense has been slipping, especially when Jaden McDaniels went down. Rudy Gobert's still swatting everything in sight, but perimeter defense, basically a polite suggestion at this point. They play slow, they grind games out, and somehow they're stuck juggling between being a serious threat and a lucky gamble. The bench feels like an empty cupboard. Now they're banking on Edwards to bail them out, hoping Gobert can hold the paint, and crossing every one of Julius Randle's fingers. Bucks. You look at this team, and it's like watching someone try to microwave a frozen turkey. Technically possible, but horrifying to witness. They started the year trying to cosplay as contenders, but things unraveled fast. Middleton even touched the floor before they punted him to Washington for Kyle Kuzma, who's been decent, sure, but let's not pretend he's patching every hole in this sinking ship. Giannis is still performing black magic nightly, top in the league in scoring, like it's light work, but even he looks like he's wondering if it's too late to play for a better run organization. Lillard's been in and out of the lineup with enough random injuries and medical issues, and Bobby Portis decided to take a 25-game vacation for reasons best left to internet rumors. Defensively, they're all over the place. Lopez is aging like milk left in the sun, and without Middleton, perimeter defense is just a distant memory. They fluked their way into an NBA Cup win, which feels like slapping a gold sticker on a fire extinguisher, but sure, congrats. Now they're limping into the playoffs, hoping Giannis can drag this mess somewhere meaningful. Spurs. This season was basically just an when healthy Wembanyama highlight reel, wrapped in chaos. Wemby was doing mutant-level stuff, 50-point games, defensive nightmares for opponents, and somehow making a Spurs game relevant on national TV. He was out here swatting shots into next week, while his teammates look like they're still figuring out how to tie their sneakers. Get better Wemby, though, was going to be Defensive Player of the Year. The whole Popovich-Wemby duo got derailed by brutal health scares, and while Mitch Johnson has done his best impersonation of a stressed-out substitute teacher, it's been clear they're just winging it. Chris Paul joined, presumably for laughs, or maybe just to mentor future historians about the extinction of true point guards. Vassell missed a chunk of time. They've got flashes of potential, sure, but they're 3-19 without Wemby or Vassell, which is basically a polite way of saying terminal. Better luck next year, San Antonio. Maybe 2026 Castle and Wemby will be elite though. The Kings season has basically been a basketball fever dream. Coaching firings, franchise players traded mid-year, random hot streaks, and yet somehow they're still limping toward the play-in like it's an accomplishment. Firing Mike Brown in December after a grim 13-20 start was basically waving a white flag, only to have Doug Christie patch together a weirdly feisty 26-20 turnaround. Trading Fox for Zach LaVine felt like lighting a bonfire in the locker room, but to their credit, LaVine's scoring bursts and questionable knee have kept them afloat, while Sabonis just keeps getting every rebound possible. DeRozan, naturally, is doing his usual mid-range assassin thing, while the defense without Fox or Horter is about as sturdy as a wet napkin. Christie's play faster, hit harder vibe has worked in spurts, but consistency remains a fairy tale. They're a flawed team, but with the West basically being held together by duct tape and sarcasm, they've got a puncher's chance. Still, let's not kid ourselves. This is chaos, not a plan. The Clippers season has basically been them duct taping their roster together and pretending it's fine, which, to their credit, is going better than expected. Kawhi Leonard missed the first 17 games because of course he did, and James Harden enjoyed his own mid-season injury sabbatical because he's contractually obligated to miss random stretches. Even so, Harden has been the team's compass, doing his usual 20 points and 8 assists, while Kawhi quietly drops buckets like it's no big deal. Norman Powell applied for 6th Man of the Year and ended up almost an all-star, while Derek Jones plays defense like a caffeinated squirrel. Shout out to Zubac though. Somehow, despite the chaos, they look a lot better than I expected before the season. Rockets. The Rockets have been riding high all year like they're already crowned champs, but let's be real. They're good, not unstoppable. They had a nice 9-game winning streak, but also stumbled through a 6-game skid in February. So it's been a roller coaster. Jalen Green's been lighting it up with over 20 points a night, but his efficiency's been all over the place. Sengun's done pretty much everything, but drive the team bus, dominating the glass, and dishing out assists like he's running point. Fred VanVleet's been the steady hand they needed, but it's not like he's dragging them to the top by himself. Thompson's defense has been wild for a guard, and Dillon Brooks keeps barking on the perimeter, giving their defense some real teeth. Even with injuries to guys like Eason and Jabari Smith Jr., they've kept pushing. The Rockets love acting like their switch-heavy defense solves every problem, but the playoffs are coming, and it's about to get real fast. Magic. The Magic have been stumbling through this season like they're caught in a fog. It's wild because they actually started strong, flying out to 16 wins by early December before the injuries rained down. Paolo's been their go-to guy, but missing over 25 games really tanked their momentum. Franz Wagner's dealt with his own ankle mess, and it's shown in his shooting dip. They brought in KCP to fix their miserable three-point shooting, but expecting him to save the offense was wishful at best. Their defense has kept them alive, with Jalen Suggs and Jonathan Isaac playing like brick walls, but they're stuck near the bottom in points per game, and the two of them are literally never healthy. The point guard spot's been a revolving door since Markelle Fultz left, and it shows every time the offense bogs down. They're crawling toward the finish line, hoping that late 9-3 run buys them some breathing room. Even if they squeeze past the play-in, with this banged-up roster and shaky offense, it feels like they're just delaying the inevitable crash land. Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have been grinding through this season like they've got something to prove, and honestly, they kind of do after last year's disaster. Still, it's been anything but smooth. Firing Taylor Jenkins that late in the season was chaos. Ja Morant's missed a big chunk of time again, but the team kept swinging, going toe-to-toe with the West's best, but he also got fined for his gun celebrations. Desmond Bane's been firing away from deep, and Jaren Jackson Jr.'s done his usual damage, swatting shots and putting up points. Rookie Zach Edey has been a monster on the boards, and Jalen Wells added some from the second round before his injury. Hopefully he's good. The defense has slipped from elite status, but they're still holding their own. Their offense keeps clicking thanks to solid ball movement and a top 3 assist rate. Now, with Morant back in action, they're pushing to climb even higher. Pacers. The Pacers have been rolling through the season with an offense that just refuses to slow down. Tyrese Halliburton's been the engine of everything, slicing defenses apart with his passing and dropping dimes like it's second nature. His chemistry with Pascal has been smooth too, especially in those pick and roll sets where they've been flat out tough to stop. Pascal's been efficient, scoring inside and knocking down shots at a strong clip, keeping the offense humming. Miles Turner's been a big problem for opponents as well, swatting shots and stretching the floor with surprising three-point accuracy for a center. Benedict Mathurin's crashing the boards like he's got something to prove every night. Andrew Nembhard's defense deserves credit too, giving them a gritty edge on the perimeter. Rick Carlisle's made sharp adjustments, tightening the defense and turning them into a team that can actually get stops when it matters. They even handled some brutal injuries, like Aaron Nesmith being out a huge chunk of the year without losing their identity. The front office kept things active, swapping in some random bigs for depth, but really, it's been the core guys driving the success. With the postseason coming fast, they're banking on Halliburton's playmaking and Turner's rim protection to carry them through some heavyweight battles in the East. Sixers. The Sixers have watched this season spiral into a mess, and honestly, it feels like it unraveled before it ever really began. They threw a ton of cash at Paul George in the offseason, hoping he'd build a supercharged trio with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, but it never took off. Injuries chewed through the roster like termites, and George barely made it past January before getting sidelined for good. Embiid's year ended early too, after barely 20 games, leaving Maxey to drag the offense around by himself until a finger injury shut him down late. The depth they tried to build just never held up. Andre Drummond and Eric Gordon gave them a little early spark, but once the injuries piled up, they faded fast. Young guys like Jared McCain and Bona showed flashes before getting swallowed up by the chaos. And even the trade for Quentin Grimes couldn't stop the bleeding, even though he looks like prime Michael Jordan. Nick Nurse's plans got thrown in the trash as they leaned way too hard on role players who just were not ready for the spotlight. The defense collapsed without Embiid, and the offense had no rhythm. Now they're stuck rolling out a lineup that looks straight out of a training camp scrimmage, just trying to survive these final games while fans hold their breath for lottery luck. The Heat have been wobbling through the season like a team stuck in limbo, never really sure if they're chasing wins or just waiting for the whole thing to collapse. Shipping out Jimmy Butler was the loudest move they made, and it left a hole bigger than they probably wanted to admit. Andrew Wiggins came back in that deal and has been steady, But let's not pretend he's carried the weight Butler left behind. Tyler Hero has tried to take over, firing up shots like he's got nothing to lose. And honestly, he's been one of the few bright spots on offense. Bam's missed time, but still anchors their defense every night, swatting shots and keeping them from completely falling apart. Rookie Ware's shown some serious flashes too, cleaning the glass and protecting the rim with way more poise than expected. Injuries have been a nightmare, and it's left them scrambling with lineups that feel stitched together at the last second. Eric Spoelstra's coaching has kept them from totally unraveling, but even he can't duct tape over everything. They squeezed out a little late season momentum, but it feels like they're just clawing to survive at this point. The play-in is the only thing left on their horizon, but unless something wild happens, they're staring at a long offseason full of uncomfortable questions. Pelicans. The Pelicans have been stuck in a nightmare all season, and it's honestly been brutal to watch. Injuries shredded their lineup from the jump, with Zion Williamson missing games, which left their offense running on fumes. When Zion did play, he bulldozed his way to over 24 points a night, but it never lasted long enough to matter. CJ McCollum tried to keep things respectable, dropping over 20 points a game and even putting up 50 in one outing. But even that felt like a lonely uphill climb. Trey Murphy stepped up big time, becoming their most reliable scorer and showing some real fire on the wing, but injuries. And Herb Jones got injured too. Now they're throwing out lineups with Elfrid Payton. Rookie Missy deserves credit too, holding down the paint better than anyone expected, even though he probably had no business starting that many games this early. They tried to spark things by bringing in Murray, and he gave them solid playmaking until injuries knocked him out too. The defense has been a disaster, basically folding anytime opponents showed a little bit of fight. Coaching adjustments never really clicked, and the bench was filled with desperation call-ups, just trying to survive. With the season in flames, all that's left is hoping the draft lottery can bail them out, because this year has been nothing but a long, painful freefall. In summary, if you were a Pelican this year, you dealt with injuries. Hornets. The Hornets have spent this season stuck in a full-blown rebuild, and it's been as rough as expected. Injuries have wrecked whatever plans they thought they had, with LaMelo Ball missing big chunks and Brandon Miller going down late just as he was hitting his stride. When Ball was healthy, he was putting up over 25 points a game and running the show. But the injuries shut him down early. Miles Bridges has tried to carry the scoring load, but his shooting's been ice cold lately, and the team's offense has been painful to watch most nights. Rookie Tajane Salane's been crashing the boards with real energy, and Mark Williams was a Laker for about 30 minutes. KJ Simpson's had some sparks off the bench, but it's clear they're mostly letting the young guys figure things out on the fly. Trading Terry Rozier for picks signaled they're thinking long-term, not chasing empty wins. Charles Lee's first season as head coach has been all about laying groundwork, and while they've shown some fight late in the year, it's been way too little, way too late. Now they're just limping to the finish line, hoping the draft lottery throws them a lifeline before they get buried under another year of frustration. Shout out to Taj Gibson though. Raptors. The Raptors have dragged themselves through this season like a team that forgot what winning feels like. RJ Barrett's tried to play the part of the go-to guy, pouring in over 20 points a night. But let's be honest, he's been wildly inefficient, and his free throws have been a headache. Scotty Barnes has stuffed the stat sheet across the board, but even he's dealt with injuries that wrecked any kind of rhythm. Emmanuel quickly barely got a chance to make an impact before his hamstring gave out, and missing almost 50 games crushed what little spark they had in the backcourt. Grady Dix stepped up, shaking off a rough rookie year and finally knocking down shots with some consistency. Jakob Pertulli's been a steady force in the paint, cleaning the glass and finishing inside, but you can only ask so much from a center with no ring. They've shuffled lineups constantly, leaned heavy on the young guys, and let the veterans fade into the background. Coach Darko has juggled defensive schemes like he's picking names out of a hat, but none of it's really stuck. Now they're staring at the lottery, clinging to the hope that draft picks can patch up the holes, because this season's been nothing short of a reality check from start to finish. Blazers. The Blazers have basically been living in the middle of an identity crisis all season, trying to figure out if they're rebuilding or secretly competing. Scoot Henderson finally started to look like the guy they hoped for, turning up the scoring after the All-Star break and finding a rhythm from deep. And Fernie Simons kept the scoreboard moving, but his late-game decisions have been sketchy at best. Shaedon Sharpe had a breakout stretch too, before an injury yanked him off the court right when he was heating up. Denny Adviu has been a bright spot, giving them solid two-way play and helping glue the whole thing together. Donovan Clingens brought real rim protection, swatting shots like it's his personal hobby, but the front court is jammed with way too many bigs fighting for minutes. DeAndre Ayton keeps putting up strong rebounding numbers, but his inconsistency makes it feel like empty calorie. The defense actually toughened up in the back half of the season, switching to an aggressive style that finally made them hard to play against. Still, the offense never fully clicked, and they never solved the traffic jam in the rotation. Now they're turning their eyes to the draft again, hoping a top pick can finally give them the balance they've been chasing all year long. Hawks. The Hawks have spent the season sprinting in circles, piling up points, but never fully solving their own problems. Trae Young's been doing exactly what you'd expect, leading the league in assists and throwing up over 24 points a night, but his shooting has been rough enough to make you wince. Jalen Johnson looked like a breakout star before a brutal knee injury wrecked his season, and they've been scrambling to fill that gap ever since. Dyson Daniels deserves some credit for stepping up defensively, swiping passes like it's a hobby, and Zachary Richache has flashed enough as a rookie to get people curious, though he's been predictably inconsistent. Okongwu's handled the center spot with way more energy, giving them some real punch in the paint after all the Capella trade noise. Offensively, they've been chucking shots at a wild pace, but efficiency has not been their friend. The defense has flipped between aggressive and lost, depending on the night, and they've let too many good teams light them up. They've juggled the lineup all year, but none of it's completely stuck. Now, with the play-in hanging over them, it's all riding on whether Trae can catch fire and Dyson can anchor the defense long enough to survive a couple more games. Nets. The Nets have been stumbling through this season like a team that forgot how to play together, and it's been rough from start to finish. Cam Thomas has done everything he can to keep them afloat, dropping over 24 points a game, but his shot selection has been a roller coaster, and crunch time has not been kind. Dennis Schroeder tried to steer the ship early on, putting up decent numbers before they flipped him for future assets, basically waving the white flag. Cam Johnson's been their only real floor spacer, shooting it well from deep, but it's felt like he's been stranded out there on his own. Nick Claxton's anchored the defense, but his impact slipped from last year, and the lack of offensive punch from the bigs has been glaring. Coach Jordi Fernandez's new motion system was supposed to spark life, but they ended up dead last in assists, which really tells the whole story. The youth movement is officially on, with guys like Noah Clowney and Jalen Wilson eating up minutes. The Bridges trade stocked the cupboard with draft picks, but it also emptied the hope out of this season. Now they're just limping to the finish, eyes locked on lottery balls. Jazz. The Jazz have spent the entire season trapped in a free fall, looking like a team stuck in a permanent rebuilding loop with no exit in sight. Laurie was supposed to carry the scoring load, but with over 30 games missed and rough shooting nights piling up, he never had a chance to lift this group. Sexton, at least, gave them some fight in the backcourt, scoring efficiently and keeping their offense from flatlining completely. Keontae, George's playmaking popped at times, but the turnovers were constant headaches and stalled way too many possessions. Rookie Isaiah Collier flashed some raw potential too, tossing out assists, but it always felt like he was learning on the job against grown men. Walker Kessler stayed busy protecting the rim, blocking shots like it was his job because it is, but even his efforts could not patch up the disaster that was their defense. They've been a complete mess defensively, bottom of the league. In every scheme, tweak from Will Hardy felt like rearranging deck chair. The young guys got their minutes. Kyle Filipowski showed small flashes, but it was all buried under losses. With the season finally limping to the finish line, the only thing left is to cross their fingers for a top pick, because that's about the only real hope they have left right now. Wizards. The Wizards have been crawling through this season like a team permanently stuck in preseason mode, and it's been a disaster from start to finish. Jordan Poole has put up points, sure, but his shooting has been all over the place and way too erratic to carry this sinking ship. Kyle Kuzma did his part early on, but they flipped him to Milwaukee at the deadline, pretty much admitting the whole thing was cooked. Alex Sarr's defensive flashes have been one of the few bright spots, swatting shots and crashing the boards, but offensively, he's been about as raw as it gets. Bub Carrington's been a nice surprise, running the offense with more control than expected, but injuries. Malcolm Brogdon barely made it out of the trainer's room, and when he did, it hardly moved the needle. Their defense has been laughable, giving up points like it's their job, and their offense hasn't been much better, running isolations with zero flow. Coach Brian Keefe has thrown everything at the wall, but nothing's stuck. Now they're limping toward the finish line, hoping the draft lottery is kind enough to save them from another season of hopeless basketball, because honestly, that's about all they've got left at this point. Cooper Flagg, you are a Washington Wizard. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.